We'll be going over IRS Notice CP91, which is an intent to seize as part of your Social Security benefits. So the IRS has the ability to place a lien on assets and then eventually, as part of the collections process, eventually seize property from taxpayers in order to pay back taxes, penalties, and interest. So a couple things about this notice. Up front, it's identified that Social Security benefits will be seized as a result of this letter. But let's go ahead and go through this step by step in order from the top down. So let's go ahead and start with the upper right hand corner. CP Notice 91. The notice date would be for January 23rd, 2018. So I always tell people to keep a close eye on the notice date, because if there are action items such as appeals, paying your taxes, responding to the IRS, there usually is a number of calendar days or working days from the notice date that you have to take your action. So, for example, a lot of times payment is due within 21 calendar days of a notice based on the billing amount. So as we go through this, I'll identify other places where this notice date might come in handy. So just keep a note of that. The rest of this Social Security number, all of this information, just review that to make sure that your Social Security number is accurate. Over here on the left-hand side is the name and address of the taxpayer. So I always encourage people to keep your address up to date with the Internal Revenue Service. Normally, when you file your tax return every year, the IRS will update your tax record with any changes to your address. But if you're in between tax returns, you can call the IRS. And if you were planning to call the IRS to talk about your notice, you can also change your address over the phone after validating your account information. If you don't plan to call the IRS and you don't want to wait on hold, you can simply complete the IRS change of address form. So that's IRS Form 8822 for individuals, IRS Form 8822-B for business owners. And we'll put links in the show notes to resources we've created on those forms. So let's take a closer look at what this notice is trying to tell us. So it says we haven't received full payment of this amount. In this case, it's zero, but obviously the IRS would be sending you a notice for some dollar amount. So under Internal Revenue Code Section 6331, the IRS can levy up to 15% of your total Social Security benefits to pay off your back taxes until you're paid in full. So this definitely is not something that most people would want, but it is probably, if the IRS is going to seize property, it's probably one of the more manageable options of doing that. So, and we'll talk about ways to get out from under a levy or a seizure in just a moment. But, as opposed to taking property and then trying to auction it off, I mean, this, for many people, this may very well just be an acceptable choice. So one thing I didn't mention is that usually you would see the IRS mailing address, the letterhead up here. I can kind of see that it looks like it's been edited out. I'm not sure why, but normally you would see the address of the IRS office that sent this notice up here. So basically, the IRS has identified the following Social Security accounts. So your Social Security number. Don't contact the Social Security Administration. The IRS says if you have any questions, you should contact the IRS directly. So if you want to send in a payment, let's imagine this was $1,000, you could simply just pay that off, and you wouldn't. Once your tax debt is paid off, then the IRS has no reason or authority to seize your assets. So if you have a zero tax bill, then the IRS can't seize your Social Security checks. If you wanted to pay that off, you can send a check or a money order payable to the United States Treasury. You should write your Social Security number on your payment and any correspondence that you plan to attach. Make sure that you address your check to this address. If there was an address up here, sometimes it's the same, sometimes it's different. So when in doubt, always refer to this address here. So this also doesn't mention a specific tax return. Otherwise you would be making a check or a money order. You would write your Social Security number with the tax year and the tax return number on here. So I did notice that this is just a blanket you owe money type account. So I don't see a whole lot of additional information in here about the tax situation at hand. Most notices will take some time to explain step by step how you incurred your tax liability, how any tax penalties were accrued, how the interest was calculated, so on and so forth. So what you need to do, the IRS says make the payment. You can also request an installment agreement. You can do it in a streamlined manner on the IRS website. If your tax debt is low enough, if it's above a certain threshold, you may need to submit IRS form 9465, which is the installment agreement request form. So you can also use automatic deductions from your bank account. You can use payroll deductions. We'll put links in the show notes about forms and resources that might be beneficial if you're looking to set up a payment plan. If you need assistance, there's reference to low income tax clinics. So if you set up an installment plan, for example, there may be an administrative cost that can be waived if you qualify as a low income taxpayer. So, but the clinics also will help you walk through this process. They are an arm of the Taxpayer Advocate Service, which solely exists to advocate for taxpayers in front of the IRS in administrative procedures. If you want to update your contact information, there's a slip that you can cut out, and you would do the same thing that you would do in a check or a voucher. You can fill out the contact, and then you would send it to the IRS. So if you want to authorize someone to contact the IRS on your behalf, you can complete the power of attorney form. That's IRS form 2848. If you do nothing, then the IRS will just start seizing funds from your Social Security account, or if you're a beneficiary of someone else's Social Security earnings, then it would be that account. So, and then there is, in this case, a hypothetical kind of detail, like billing detail, for visualization purposes. Obviously, this would go into specific detail about your tax situation in a real life setting. And then penalties, there's a verbiage here about failure to pay penalties. And then you can have certain penalties removed or reduced. There are a couple of ways. So first, under the first time abate program, basically the IRS has a wide range of discretion to forgive or reduce penalties for anyone that's in a first-time situation. Then there's what's known as reasonable cause. So specifically, if you had like a family emergency, like if there was a death in the family, if you were a victim of a natural disaster, or other extenuating circumstances, you could also complete what is known as IRS Form 843, which is your claim for refund and request for abatement. So the IRS can give you abatement for a first-time basis, reasonable cause, or if the IRS gave you erroneous written advice that you relied upon and then you were penalized on your tax return. So that depends on you giving the IRS complete information about the situation, and you asked for the advice in writing. They gave it to you in writing. You followed it, and then you got penalized. You can have those penalties removed. And then interest charges, there's some verbiage about how they calculate interest. Generally speaking, on most notices, I would expect to see kind of a quarterly breakdown of the interest rates and how they were applied to the tax situation. You can't really abate interest in the same manner that you abate penalties. However, any interest that was imposed on penalties that are later abated will be recalculated so that the interest doesn't apply to that. So if you had, say, $500 worth of tax penalties on a $5,000 tax bill, if you were being charged interest for $5,500 of tax and penalties, if you file IRS Form 843 and you have the penalties removed, you would still have the interest on the $5,000 of tax, but the $500 of penalties would no longer have any interest because they no longer exist. So we come to the bottom of this. I'm going to take a quick look at what the IRS website has to say about this notice. So basically it says the same thing. There's not a whole lot of additional information. There is a link to an FAQ about liens and levies. So if you really want to go into the details about that, you can do that. So I think that's about all we have. I'll put links in the show notes to resources we've created about some of the forms we've discussed in this video. So if you like our articles, please subscribe to our newsletter. If you like our YouTube videos, please subscribe to our YouTube channel. And as always, if you have any questions or comments, or if there's another topic that you'd like to see covered in an upcoming video, please hit me up in the comment section. Thank you very much and have a great day.